Diabolical heavy metal horror movies that are awesome. Metalsploitation. Heavy metal is evil and dark, the kind of music that doesn't talk about peace and love or a bed of roses. It deals with a devil and themes of death. Do you know what else is equally diabolical and dark? Horror movies. Heavy metal and horror share a symbiotic relationship, constantly shaping each other to provide a grotesque attitude and visceral imagery. They share and extend their common killing ground. The sharp music thrills your auditory senses, and this amplifies the horror received by your visual senses. The result is a heightening feeling of fright and terror. Metal and horror are a match made in hell. Some critics and fans argue that this hellish union saw its birth in the 70s and grew into prominence in the 80s and the 90s. Just as how romance and comedy go perfectly hand in hand, heavy metal and horror come together to form an unholy bond called Metalsploitation. In this video, we will talk about 11 movies with metal so heavy and horror so badass, you'll have to go to sleep with the lights turned on. Before we go into our list, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click from you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. Let's begin. Lords of Chaos, 2018. A 17-year-old boy in Oslo named Euronymous is determined to defy his orthodox upbringing and obsesses over creating the first black metal band in Norway. After successfully bringing together members, he creates a band called Mayhem, but he soon realizes that a young band like his would be difficult to promote and popularize. He resorts to publicity stunts involving violence and arson. Members of his band, especially Varg, burn down churches and commit murders, but quickly the band's criminal instincts overtake their desire to simply gain popularity. Jonas Ackerlund directed Lords of Chaos. It is based on real-life events and is adapted from a novel of the same name. Euronymous and Varg intend to create true Norwegian black metal and form a band that will devote itself to Satan worship. The film features a handsome collaboration of gory violence and heavy metal, creating an atmosphere of horror that suggests impending doom. Ackerlund successfully displays how an unstable adolescent mind operates when full of angst and frustration at their society. Euronymous and Varg share a love-hate relationship with black metal and experience a maniac high when promoting and popularizing their newly created subgenre of heavy metal.
You're a fucking maniac. Am I evil? Yes, I am!
The film has fared commendably in terms of its technical aspect too. The artistic principles of a horror film are as potent as the pop culture imagery presented, from music cues to poster art. When the band is not succumbing to fits of violence and rage, they are indulging in the great metal LPs of Metallica and Black Sabbath. Unsurprisingly, Lords of Chaos features original music by the real-life Mayhem band members, including songs Funeral Frog, Death Crush, and Pagan Fears, which were written by Euronymous and Necro Butcher.
How was that concert tonight? What's the matter, son?
I love you, Dad.
Black Roses, 1988. Damien and his heavy metal band Black Roses come to the quiet town of Mill Basin to perform. The townspeople do not know that the band is actually a Satanist sect, harboring the nefarious intent to turn the kids into zombies of the devil. As the band performs its dark music in a concert, the children enter a zombified trance, becoming pawns for the band who attempt to take over the whole of Mill Basin. All the headbanging comes to a standstill when the townsfolk realize what's going on, and Matthew Morehouse is a local teacher who leads them in an effort to stop the band from hell. Critics and fans are highly opinionated when it comes to Black Roses. Some term the film as sinfully underrated, while others classify it as one that's so bad it's good. The film is the frightening visual adaptation of the phrase, "music turns kids into monsters." The special effects might not be magnificent, but this hardly matters considering the inclusion of some classic music from bands like Tempest, King Cobra, Hallows Eve, and Lizzie Borden. The soundtrack and score of Black Roses builds the required tension and darkness inherent in a horror film. Director John Fasano did not really pay as much attention to the narrative and storytelling aspects, throwing together elements of catastrophe, possession, romance, and some nudity here and there. There's incoherence in the way it has been written, and the screenplay is sloppy with goofs. Having said that, Black Roses was not made to be technically perfect. It was intended as poetry, dedicated to the heavy metal culture of the 80s. Trick or Treat, 1986. Trick or Treat centers on Eddie and his heavy metal hero Sammy Kerr. Eddie is a high school kid subjected to bullying every now and then. He is given one of Sammy's rare recordings by a local DJ called Nuke. Sammy passed away in a tragic fire sometime after recording the album. Eddie plays the recording, but somehow it is played backward and somehow summons Sammy's ghost into the world. The vengeful spirit unleashes his wrath onto Eddie's bullies in the name of metal and revenge, embarking on a spree that leaves a pile of dead bodies. Singers Ozzy Osbourne and Gene Simmons play significant roles in this brutal and scary heavy metal horror, and a band called Fastway provide the music. Director Charles Martin Smith successfully extracts some fine performances from Mark Price and Lisa Orgolini, who play Eddie and his girlfriend respectively. After watching Trick or Treat, you'll realize that the mildest thing about the film is its horror element. Do we now need to tell you how great the heavy metal is? This film is any metal lover's wet dream, or maybe a wishful nightmare. Interestingly, the film has some humorous and satirical elements, mocking the treatment of metal music and musicians by American society back in the 80s. Both heavy metal and horror films were treated by many as things that were corrupting young American minds, and this film was Martin Smith's answer to such accusations. The Gate, 1987. Al and Glenn are alone at home. Their parents are out of town for the weekend, and the two use this window of opportunity to get into trouble. Al throws a party whilst little Glenn and a few friends investigate a bottomless pit in their backyard, which was created when a tree was removed. When one of Al's friends buries Glenn's recently deceased pet dog Angus, the gates of hell are accidentally opened, summoning creatures and demons from the hole. Al, Glenn, and their friend Terry will have to survive the house filled with demons and old gods. This Canadian film succeeds as a childhood fantasy movie about monsters, and at the same time does superbly well as Metalsploitation. There's moderate violence and gore, for instance, symbols painted on the wall with blood and a character stabbing an eyeball with a glass shard. Yet even with this moderation, the film manages to build and sustain its horror element, largely due to its dark music. The film doesn't really build a story around heavy metal. The album referred to in the film acts as a part of the summoning. Though the heavy metal is sprayed all over the film, it has been well incorporated throughout and doesn't seem out of place in any of the sequences. Songs like Delusions of Grandeur and Everybody's Running are particular gems. DEATHGASM, 2015. Brody is a metalhead whose mother has been sent away due to her drug addiction, and he is sent to live with his aunt and uncle. Brody has a tough time settling into his new lifestyle until he meets Zach, a fellow headbanger. Their love for metal brings them closer, so much so that they form a band called DEATHGASM. The duo recruit Dion and Giles to complete their band. Brody and Zach later break into the house of a metal superstar named Ricky Daggers and find a music sheet named The Black Hymn. DEATHGASM plays The Black Hymn and unleash a demon who possesses the townspeople and wreaks havoc. Now it is up to DEATHGASM and a friend named Medina to send the demon back and save the day. DEATHGASM is by far one of the funniest Metalsploitation movies ever made. It has some beautifully visceral zombie killing, a scary demon, a pinch of romance, and massive amounts of humor and heavy metal. New Zealand has provided several crowd-pleasing horror comedies, and Jason Lee Howden's DEATHGASM takes a high spot on that list. We think it is hilarious when Orthodox Christians turn into zombies by listening to some very hardcore heavy metal and are killed using their own sex toys. The film's name tells the audience what to expect and delivers precisely that. DEATHGASM is a laugh riot. It's like a volcanic eruption where gore and heavy metal music fuse together to wreak havoc in all directions. Special effects used in the film are top-notch and complement all the head-smashing and gut-slicing. Shock 'Em Dead, 1991. Martin works as a pizza delivery boy during the day, and by night he works on his music. One day he gets a call for an audition with a band, but his boss refuses to give him a day off, so Martin quits his job. He goes to the audition but fails spectacularly and returns to his old boss begging for a reinstatement. A jobless and penniless Martin comes across a strange woman who claims she knows voodoo and can solve his problems for a small price. Martin has nothing to lose and gives in to the woman. She stabs him in the heart, but Martin is resurrected and finds himself living with 3 hot women by his side, having gained the wondrous guitar skills. But all of this comes with a price. Martin has to kill people and eat their souls in order to remain alive. Martin re-auditions for the spot with a band, and this time he aces it. He soon falls in love with the bass guitarist's girlfriend, and his band becomes suspicious of his secrets. The cast's acting is a letdown, but the film on the whole doesn't disappoint. Mark Freed made this movie within a few years of the release of great films like Trick or Treat and Black Roses, but it went largely unnoticed. The unpopularity can be attributed to its weak story. It was written in just 3 weeks, and the whole film was shot in another 3 weeks. Shock 'em Dead has flaws that are hard to ignore, but it is definitely a fun watch. Its metal thunder will leave you rock and rolling, but that's about it.
Never seen my music again. Not here, not anywhere, do you understand?
Phantom of the Paradise, 1974. Swan is the wealthiest and most influential music producer of the time, and he is about to inaugurate a splendid rock palace called the Paradise. He wants a unique number to mark the beginning of his new enterprise, and he plans to steal the music of a musician called Winslow Leach. Winslow learns of this, and in his quest to find out why Swan has stolen his song, he is beaten up, framed for a drug trade, and put behind bars. However, Leach breaks out of prison and visits the Paradise, killing everyone who intends on helping Swan, except for a beautiful young singer called Phoenix. Leach attempts to exact his vengeance, only to find out that Swan had sold his soul to the devil 20 years ago. Leach now faces a dilemma. The film is a satire on the rock biz world, telling the familiar tale of corruption in the industry and exploitation of a gifted musician. It's basically a musical about rock and heavy metal music. Director Brian De Palma hired Paul Williams to create the dark and energetic numbers, and he was also cast as the film's villain Swan. Some of the songs include Goodbye, Faust, Upholstery, Special to Me, Old Souls, Somebody Super Like You, Life at Last, and The Hell of It. Paul Williams was nominated for that year's Oscar in the category of Best Music, scoring Original Song Score. Phantom of the Paradise is living proof why they should make more horror films spliced with heavy metal DNA. It doesn't quite rank as one of the great horror films, but in the Metal-spoitation subgenre, it is definitely a classic.
What they mean is a fucking weak, cowardly sheep that has no original ideas of his own. They're just blindly follows anyone's the first person to blow in the fucking wind.
You Summon the Darkness, 2019. The film is set in 1988, and Alexis, Val, and Bev are on their way to a heavy metal show along a highway. The girls stop at a local convenience store where the TV is airing a televangelist called Pastor John Henry Butler. Butler is talking about the evils of heavy metal, and the girls notice a newspaper headline that reads "Teen Slain in Newest Satanic Killing." The girls finally reach a grim rock show by a band called Soldiers of Satan, where they meet Mark, Ivan, and Kovacs. After the concert is over, the 6 of them go to Alexis's father's ranch in an isolated countryside. The house party soon becomes a slaughterhouse of sorts. Whatever you may have heard about this film, we urge you to forget it and watch it using a lens of Metal-spoitation. We Summon the Darkness is a horror comedy that is extremely high on energy and is sheer fun throughout. Alexandra Daddario and Maddie Hassan give electrifying performances in this shockingly terrifying film. The music is engaging, both when the murders are happening and even when they're not. Director Mark Myers and writer Alan Trezza succeed in creating a decent musical psycho-thriller for the modern day. Their murder cult thriller manages to summon darkness in a brooding yet somehow funny way. The well-documented fear of heavy metal that built during the 80s and 90s is realistically shown, particularly in the televangelist's use of biblical references. But there's a lot of graphic content here too. For heavy metal fans out there, the band Soldiers of Satan perform Black Funeral by Merciful Fate in the film.
If they're dead, you want me to sing? Somebody's killed her.
I know.
It was me.
Rocktober Blood, 1984. Billy, the leading musician of his band, goes on a killing spree. He kills around 20 innocent people before molesting his girlfriend Lynn, though she is saved by a security guard. Billy is tried and executed. A year later, Lynn has formed her own band called Headmistress, and Billy has returned from the dead. The band is on a musical tour called ROCKTOBER Blood Tour when Billy resumes his killing spree, revealing himself only to Lynn and the people he kills.
Why are you running from me? Aren't you glad to see me?
This leads people to question Lynn's sanity, as she blames the murders on a dead man. The climax of the film takes place in a rock show by the band, with thousands of headbangers watching as Billy massacres the dancers and singers on stage. At the same time, the audience is thrilled, believing that the bloodbath is part of the show. The undead Billy sings a song on the stage too. Rocktober Blood's ending is one of the most open-ended ever. Lynn's band in the final sequence is actually a real heavy metal band called Sorcery, who provide the most ecstatic moment of the film. How did they manage this? Their musical performance is top-notch for a movie like Rocktober Blood. The climax involves a masked man singing some really good metal while slashing and gutting scantily dressed women. Dark music engulfs the atmosphere like fog, and blood spills everywhere like rain. The irony being that the headbanging audience are loving all of this, even as a severed head is thrown at them from the humongous stage. As a slasher metal horror, Rocktober Blood fares well. If you enjoy a bit of 80s cheese and drama, this is your movie. Rock and Roll Nightmare, 1987. A band called Triton travels to an isolated farmhouse in Canada in order to record some new music, unaware that it is home to some deadly demons. John's girlfriend Randy, Stig's girlfriend Luann, and Roger's new wife Mary visit the farmhouse with the three men. As the band gets busy recording the music, the demons also get to work, secretly killing the visitors one by one and possessing their souls until only John is left. The demons try and repeatedly fail to possess John's soul, and eventually the fallen angel Beelzebub appears, at which point John reveals that he is in fact the Archangel Intercessor.
I am the Intercessor.
A battle between angels is imminent. You must be wondering why we've included a film with rock and roll in the title in a list dedicated to heavy metal movies. The great Canadian bodybuilder, singer, and composer John Micklethor stars as John Triton, aka Intercessor, providing the script and the music for the film too. The film doesn't deliver much in terms of acting or direction, which isn't surprising considering the low budget and the fact that almost everyone involved was an amateur. There's hardly any plot to the film. It seems as Thor put all his efforts into the solid heavy metal soundtrack instead, and the horror element is moderate but suffices. All things said, the film proudly boasts a steady barrage of heavy metal, and with demons and angels fighting on screen, this is exactly the kind of stuff that we highly recommend to our die-hard headbangers.
If you guys enjoyed this video, give us a like, subscribe, and press that bell icon that will help you get notifications. We upload an awesome video every day. Have an amazing day ahead and stay safe.